as I was growing up, I was never, I think, what you would consider a good kid. I kind of got into a lot of trouble, made a lot of bad decisions, just wasn't on the path that probably most of your parents would want you on. Just to illustrate that a little bit, I was kicked out of kindergarten. I don't know, that's not like, I'm not bragging about it, but I don't know how many people can say that. So not only do I have a gold medal, but I also was kicked out of kindergarten, which is kind of crazy. And what was wrong was I grew up in a household where things were just kind of a little bit crazy. My parents got divorced. There was a lot of physical abuse. There was a lot of verbal abuse. There was tons of drug abuse going on. And so as you can imagine, as a kid, when things are unstable, and you don't have something stable to come back home to, your life kind of becomes unstable, and the decisions that you make and your future and where you think you're going to go are a bit unstable. And so that was kind of my reality. And because I was only seeing what I would call anger at home, and because my mom was unhappy and my dad was unhappy and all those types of things, I didn't really know what it meant to actually be happy. And so the only emotion I really knew was anger. And so when I would get sad, it would turn into anger. When somebody, did something to me that I didn't like, rather than just being irritated, it would turn into anger. Even when I was happy, I would find a way to kind of turn that into anger. And the things that made me feel good was when I was able to express myself physically and emotionally and kind of lash out and control situations. Because nothing else in my life was able to be controlled by me. So through my younger childhood, I did a lot of that type of stuff. It got me into a lot of trouble. And as I was going through life, my mom was digging through my desk, and she found a little note. She found a bunch of little notes actually in my desk. And this is about fifth or sixth grade. And she realized that I was at about sixth grade suicidal. And so that made her really nervous. I was drawing pictures of myself, hanging, and I was poking myself with my protractor and doing things like that, that really brought her, to a place where she didn't know where I was going to be if she didn't do something. And so my mom got me involved in counseling. And as I was meeting with my counselor, I still remember his name. His name is Mr. Beach. He was this, kind of balding white guy with these real funny looking round circular glasses that he would look at me from across the table with. And I would go in, and I didn't think it was much of anything. He would play pickup sticks with me, and that's about it. But he would just let me talk. And he, after a while of meeting with me, went to my mom and said, listen, if you want Bryan to be around, if you don't want to find him dead or in prison, you need to get him involved in sports. And so my mom, in her kind of infinite wisdom at the time, even though she was a little bit troubled herself, said, listen, you can either run track and field or you can swim, because those are the two sports that are individual sports. So they don't require me to touch anybody else. I had to stay in my lane. If I went out of my lane, I would get disqualified. If I did really good, it was because I put in the effort, not because of anybody else. If I did really bad, it was because I didn't put in the effort, not because of anybody else. And so she said, you can run track and field or swim. And I always tell people I was deathly afraid of wearing a Speedo, so I chose track and field. That's kind of how that happened. So anyways, long story short, as I continued to go on through life and starting to run track and field and those types of things, I started to realize that track was something that I really liked. And even though I continued to get in trouble for a little bit, slowly but surely things started to change, because now I had something that I cared about. I had something that was in my control and that I could affect. And so if you guys are probably all too young to know the movie Chariots of Fire, but as I was going into kind of middle school, high school, my mom made me watch this movie called Chariots of Fire. And it's about a famous runner. His name is Eric Liddell. And he was a Christian runner. And so he believed that you couldn't run on Sundays, right? That was a Sabbath, and you weren't supposed to work and you weren't supposed to do anything on the Sabbath. And they made this movie about him because the Olympics, when he made it to the Olympics, it actually, the day that he was supposed to run, I believe it was the 400 meters or something like that, or the 100 meters. It was one of those. It fell on a Sunday. And so they were on this big steamship going over to the Olympics. He knew that this was going to fall on a Sunday, and there was this whole deal going back and forth on whether or not he was going to compete. And he said basically he wasn't going to compete, but he was the best runner in the world at the time. And so what they did was they actually allowed him to run an event that wasn't his premier event so that he could compete in the Olympics, and he ended up winning that event even though it wasn't his event. So it was a really cool story, but my mom made me watch that. I didn't want to watch it because I think it was in black and white. I don't remember. But I do remember a line, a specific quote from that movie. And when Eric Liddell ran, he said, "When I run, I feel God's pleasure." And that's what running became for me as I was going through this troubled childhood. It became this place where the track became my sanctuary. It was the one place where I could go run myself into the ground no matter what was going on in my life anywhere else, no matter how much chaos was surrounding me. I could go to the track and I could run and run and run until I just didn't have the energy to fight anymore. And I would give up every day, and I would just lay on the track on my back, throwing up, cramping, exhausted. And I would say, I just can't do it. And I'd kind of throw up a little prayer, like, I can't do it. Like, you're going to have to step in here, God, if you're real, and you're going to have to make this all work. And so I did that every single day. But when I got done doing that, I would feel so much better. I would feel this weight of all the chaos in my life lifted off my chest. And so you can imagine when you feel like that, you would do this over and over and over again, because that was the only place where everything just felt right. And so I always tell people, when I run, I felt like I was running in the presence of God. Like, I felt like it was the one place that I was supposed to be, where everything around me just kind of melted away and I was at peace for just even a little bit. And so that's why I wanted to do it over and over and over and over again. So anyways, long story short, I did that all the way through high school, started to make a little better decisions, kind of turned my grades around a little bit, was able to get a scholarship to a school called Azusa Pacific University, which is where Mandy and I met. I went on to run there collegiately on a full ride scholarship. I will point out that it was a small school when I went there. And so the reason I went there wasn't because it was the only school. I actually, by the time I finished high school, I had broken 4 state records at the state championship meet. I placed second in the team standings by myself. I didn't have anybody else on my team there. I had scholarship offers to every school in the country, Division I, all the way down to, all the way up to Ivy League schools, down to NAIA schools. I ended up choosing an NAIA school. I think it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. And from there went on to compete internationally, winning, a few world championships, an Olympic silver medal, an Olympic gold medal, and really, being able to do some really amazing, fun, crazy things that I never would have imagined in my entire life. I would never imagine I was able to do. So that's kind of where I started and kind of where I went. And now one of the things that I was able to do with the platform that I was given is I'm able to go and speak and do these types of things, which is really fun for me. But also I've got 3 kids and my wife is who I met in college, and we've dated for the longest time and then got married. We've been married for, 15 years now, 16 years, something like that. It's been a while. My oldest son is 14, and then I've got a 12-year-old daughter who's about to turn 13 in about a month. And then I've got a 10-year-old daughter as well. So life is crazy busy. They're all swimmers, and we keep up with each other, trying to, make sure that we remain a family and see each other and talk and all that kind of stuff. And then I started a couple different businesses. I've got a group fitness franchise that's called Eat the Frog Fitness, and I can answer questions about that later. But we are the franchisor, and we sell franchises across the country, also in Canada. And then I have a small tech incubator. We build apps. And so that's based out in California, whereas my gym business is based out of Washington State. And those are the 2 things that I'm doing now, along with speaking and kind of trying to, be a good dad and husband. So I don't know, Mandy, I hope that was quick enough, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. I will say this, I know that things are a little bit crazy right now, and I was sharing this with my team, of my staff that kind of helps run all of our franchise sales and everything. But I was telling them, one of the things that I always like people to remember is everybody thinks that, as a Olympian or as somebody that won a gold medal, that somehow was born to do what I did. And I always tell people, the reason why I share my story and where I came from is because I always tell them I wasn't born an Olympic gold medalist. I didn't have the storybook kind of upbringing that everybody thinks you have to have. I wasn't the fastest person growing up. I remember racing with girls and getting beat by girls in 6th grade and things like that. When I first started track, I was getting 7th place. For those of you that don't know, that's like, there's only 8 lanes. So if you're getting 7th, you're like second to the last, right? So I was not, I tell people I wasn't born with it saying Olympic gold medalist on my birth certificate. That's not at all the way it was. I was much like many of you, probably worse off than most of you because you're here, and I would have never have done this when I was a kid. So good on you for being a part of a group like this. But I was just a normal kid who had what sadly is a normal kind of upbringing now and a normal kind of life for most kids now. But I was able to learn a few things along the way, and I had a support group and people that were behind me that carried me through when I wasn't able to kind of figure it out and do it on my own. And so I would say if I can do it, any one of you can make your wildest dreams come true. I've absolutely no doubt that that's a possibility. It's just a matter of how bad you actually want it. Are you willing to make the sacrifices and things to make that a reality? And I can give you a whole speech on how to do that. But the other thing I want people to understand is when you're in times of craziness and chaos like this, the people, what separates the gold medalists from the guys that, let's say, just win state championships, right? There's a massive gap there, but what separates those people are just something very, very small. And other than, the things that you would think, like, paying attention to technique and making sure that you train hard physically and all that kind of stuff, really what it is it's being able to take advantage of opportunities when they come. And what people see most times when they see chaos like this is they see it as a hurdle and something that keeps them from being successful. The ones that are great take opportunities like this and they capitalize on them. And so as you're going through this like coronavirus or any type of hurdle that kind of comes your way, what I would encourage you to do is not look at it as something that's trying to keep you from being successful, but look at it as an opportunity to capitalize. I kind of explain it like this. When you're a runner, and Mandy will know this, and you're running outside, or let's say a cross-country race, and you come to a hill, 99% of the people are going to look at that hill and go, crap, I'm so tired, I need to walk. And the people that are great are going to look at that hill and go, everybody else is going to walk here, so I'm going to sprint up this hill no matter how tired it's going to make me, and I'll catch my breath at the end of the race. That's the type of mentality you have to have when we're kind of faced with these types of situations that we didn't plan for, that maybe aren't what we wanted to have happen, that maybe make us have to adjust our planning just a little bit. But you really want to have that type of mindset, because perspective will change everything for you. So anyways, hopefully you guys understand that, and it gives you a little bit of encouragement and helps you as we're all kind of trying to figure out how to get through all this, but also in the future as you're looking at what comes next, and you guys have a lot of life to live. So I'm sure that there will be things that you're gonna come up against. So that's what I had to say.
Awesome, Bryan, thank you. Amazing.
Yeah, no problem.
Maybe you already touched on several of the things I wanted to ask you about, sort of facing difficulty and having a mentality to do hard things. Maybe one question that I think is unique to your story, you went into one Olympics as a kind of total underdog and ended up with a silver medal, and one Olympics as more of a favorite and you won the gold. And that's a lot of mental space to span. And so what did you learn about yourself through training and hard work to kind of be able to run, come to a competition as a total underdog and as a favorite? And what does that feel like? Yeah, so, the way I always explain it to everybody is when I was competing, I know I don't think it's so hard to put into perspective, right? It's like, I didn't have to just be the best in like my town, right? Or the best in my state, or the best in like my region or my country. Like, I wanted to be the best in the world. There's one person, just one in 7 billion people. There's one person that's going to walk away with that gold medal for the decathlon. I looked it up once because I just wanted to see what my odds were. Because even though there's 7 billion people in the world, not all 7 billion are competing, right? So I started to look it up and I Googled it. You guys might be able to find it better than I did, but
this was a few years ago, it said that my odds of winning the Olympic gold medal in Beijing were 22 million to 1. Like that's not good odds. And I don't know if they take into account the fact that I have asthma, the fact that I suffer from migraines, that I've had bouts with anxiety, or that the weather wasn't the way it was supposed to be that day and it was pouring down rain. Like, I have no idea if they take those things into account, but if you take those things into account, I think my odds are even greater, right? And so it's crazy coming into competitions. I think going into the competition in Athens, which was my first Olympics in 2004, it was different because I was the underdog. And so going into it, it was more about experience. And so the more experience I had, the more I was exposed to those types of competitions. I think that's what allowed me to do well. It was a completely different experience from Athens to Beijing, where, like you said, I was no longer the underdog, and I had to compete for the gold. And so what I always tell people is I had to learn a few different things. One, I learned that I was a creature of habit and routine. I like routine, and so anything that took me out of my routine was a little bit difficult, and so I had to practice having my plans change. So I would come to the track, and my coach knew that I knew what practice was, and I that's what I was prepared for. And he'd be like, okay, today we're doing this. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, that's not, I didn't eat the right stuff. Like I did this before, and I didn't, and I had all these things. And he'd be like, sorry, like, figure it out, and I'd be like, crap. And I'd have to just try to figure out how to adjust mentally for something that really was throwing me off, and I would get upset. I'd get really mad. And so things like that, just prepping for every little scenario, analyzing things. But the three things that I would tell you is, I think you have to know how to focus. This is part of that speech that I said I could give to you later, but like, most people don't know what it means to focus. And what it means to focus is you have to eliminate all distractions. That means, like, I'm not gonna, this is gonna sound really bad, but money could be a distraction. Friends can be a distraction. Believe it or not, I had family members that were distractions. And you have to identify what those things are. And so I always tell people, you break your life up into 5 different buckets. You have a spiritual, a mental, emotional, a physical, and 4 buckets. And social, 5 buckets. And you break your life up into all those 5 areas, and you look at all of them, and you ask yourself, which one of those things that I put into those buckets is helping me get one step closer to my goal, and which ones aren't. And anything that's not helping you get one step closer to your goal is a distraction. And so you have to eliminate those things. And that's easy for most people to do, but what's really hard is when you get to the things that you really like, like maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you think, oh my gosh, I love this person and they're going to be around forever and all that stuff. But then you realize they're maybe a distraction, and you have to really make a hard decision on whether or not you're going to keep that person in that position in your life and that level of priority in your life in order to reach your goals. Like, that's when things get really, really hard. Or for me, when you're being offered, $150,000 to have a sponsorship from a person, to come to a party where you only have to be there for 45 minutes and you get to make $150K to be there, but it doesn't line up with who you are and the things that help you stay centered. And you're afraid of, like, what kids are going to see and what that's going to sound like and look like when kids see you doing that. And you have to turn down that check because it doesn't line up with who you are and keeping you focused on helping you get one step closer to your goal. Or whether or not to get married before you actually achieve your goal, right? Like, that was something that I had to do as well. Whether or not my wife was going to be a distraction or whether or not she was going to be a support for me to get one step closer to my goal. And so that's where that gets really, really tough. And the people that make it are the ones that can make those tough decisions sometimes. So you have to learn how to focus. You have to have a plan. I always tell people, I don't just mean any plan. If I asked you guys what one thing you're doing today, what's one thing you're going to do today to help you get one step closer to your goal, I would hope that all of you would be able to tell me. And not broadly, not like, I'm going to send a few emails, but I want to know who you're sending it to, what it's going to say, what it's going to be about. And then I want you to detail out how that's helping you get one step closer to goal. Most people don't have that kind of plan. And when I had to have a plan, I had a 4-year plan. So if you had asked me on a specific day, 4 years from this point, where I was going to be in the world, what that day was going to look like 4 years in advance, I could tell you what my training was going to look like, how much weight I was going to have to lift that day, how many reps. I could tell you how much the weight was going to be down to the half pound. I could tell you how fast I needed to run down to the thousandth of a second. I could tell you how far I needed to run down to the meter. I could tell you where I was going to be in the world, what I was going to be feeling like, the probability of me being sick because of where I was in my training. I could tell you every aspect of my day, how many calories I had to eat, what I was going to weigh, like my body weight. I could tell you all of those things 4 years in advance because we had that detailed of a plan to get to where I wanted to go. So you have to learn how to focus, you have to have a plan, and then I think you have to surround yourselves with good people. And if you don't surround yourselves with good people, you're going to see all the time throughout, ESPN and on the news, you'll see businessmen, you'll see athletes, you'll see tons of people, maybe even in your own life, that have the world at their fingertips. They're being offered $5 million contracts and they're flying around on G5s and they're doing all this crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, they make one bad decision that eliminates, that takes away an entire lifetime of good decisions. And so often those bad decisions that are made don't happen in a vacuum when the person's by themselves. So often those bad decisions are made because of the influence of the. So I just can't stress enough how important it is to surround yourselves with good people. But those are the three things that I had to learn during that process that I would say helped me win not just the silver medal, but actually go on to win the gold medal, even though they were two very different experiences. Sorry, that was a long answer, I know.
You're good. Michelle's going to ask a question, and then we probably have to wrap up, and we'll hand it over to Superintendent Balow as well. But Michelle, go for it.
Yeah, first of all, nice to meet you. Thanks so much for joining us today. I have a lot of questions about what Mandy was like in college, but I'll save those for after the call. I have a question. So part of your story that really struck me that I think would probably resonate with a lot of students right now is sort of finding that personal accountability when you were young and you were getting into sports. I think a lot of students right now are finding themselves in a position where they have to be more personally accountable than they've ever been before. And they might not necessarily even have the outlets that they normally have. There are no sports right now. They don't go to school. A lot of kids, or most kids, are taking classes pass fail now. So it's sort of hard to find that drive, I think, when it's not really obvious what the goal even is. If you could touch on just how to maybe find that within yourself to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, so I think a big part of my accountability came from my goal, and I know that goals are a little bit crazy right now because you might have a goal of getting an A in a class, and that's not there anymore. What I had to do was I had to find a goal that was beyond my current place where I was currently at. And that goal had to be something bigger than just the money or the fame or, the accolades and all that kind of stuff. There had to be some meaning and real importance to the goal that I was trying to achieve. It was more of a life goal than anything else, and a character goal and a personal goal. For me, it was my faith. And it had a big part to do with my faith in the man and the person that I wanted to be at the end of the day when my story was over. And so having that goal set way, way out in the distance helped me kind of create the plan of action to lead me forward. So what I would say is you've got to go out and you've got to find out what your goal is, and it's so hard because everybody's goal is different. But then the three things that I just told you about, those three things, learning how to focus once you have that goal, learning how to create a plan. And you guys have got plenty of people in your life, it seems like, to help you create that plan or even kind of help you figure out where you need to focus and where you might not be focused. But you've got people around you, and then finding that support system. No matter how good your focus is, no matter how good your plan is, every once in a while, you're going to wake up in the morning. And I would tell you that every single morning I woke up and I would look at, my alarm would go off and I'd be like, I just don't want to get out of bed today. I don't want to go to practice. I don't want to have to go to the weight room and lift for 2 hours. where it's going to hurt. I don't want to go have to train for another 5 hours on the track in 100-degree weather, where I'm going to be laying on the ground, throwing up and cramping and just be completely exhausted. Like after I trained for 20 years, like after the first year, it kind of gets to a point where you're like, it gets old. You know, you just don't necessarily feel like doing it all the time. But having those goals, understanding what I was doing and how that was going to help me reach my end goal, what was so important to me at the very end, that's what kept me going. And then surrounding myself with people that when I woke up every day and I didn't feel like doing that, my wife would like lean over and like kick me out of the bed, you know, and just like push me onto the floor and say, listen, you got to go, you know. And so I would find that support group. I don't know if you guys, when I was in college, I had what we called an accountability group, and it was me and like 4 other guys that we committed to meeting once a week and just talking about life. Like if life was good, we would talk about how life was good. If life just sucked, we would talk about how life just sucked. But we all knew what each other's goals were. And we all knew, we didn't know the specific plans on how to get there, but when we came to meet together and we all knew each other's goals and we talked about how we just weren't feeling motivated or that sort of thing, those guys would literally step into my life and call me every single day. Or they'd come over to my house and meet me, or they'd meet me out at the track and say, dude, where were you today? I was out there and you weren't there. And so they created some accountability for me along the way. So that's what I would recommend. Besides those 3 things, I would, and one other thing, routine. Like routine is huge. I cannot tell you how big of a deal routine is. And so the routine for me started the night before. It was setting my alarm clock, because that's when I knew that if I set my alarm clock, I knew that it would go off in the next morning. And I knew that if my alarm clock went off the next morning, I'd probably get into the shower. And I knew that if I just got into the shower, I would probably get up and eat my breakfast and do that. And I knew if I just ate my breakfast, I would probably just get in the car to start driving to the weight room. And I knew if I got in the car and just started driving to the weight room, once I got there, I'd probably lift. And I knew that if I just did that, I'd probably make it to the track. And it was literally like one step at a time. I always tell people a race is nothing more than just putting one foot in front of the other. And so having a routine is going to help you stay on your plan. But then, like I said, having that accountability group, that's where things get deep, and that's where things kind of get intimate, and where people can speak into your life and help keep you accountable. So anyways, I could talk all day, and I don't want to take up the superintendent's time. So hopefully that helps answer it a little bit, and I can always hop back on, or if people want to hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, I can answer questions there. So
awesome.
I don't do Snapchat, sorry. So if you guys are on Snapchat, you're not going to find me. Or TikTok, sorry, don't do TikTok either.
It's dating. I mean, you saying the names of your children was making me feel old. So,
I know.
Okay.
By the way, Mandy was an absolute angel. She was so good that we had her babysit our kids all the time. So, and we don't just let anybody do that.
Oh, thanks. Maybe we'll end. And actually, the superintendent said she's enjoying listening to you talk so much. She doesn't mind if you go a little bit late, which is awesome. But maybe we'll have you wrap up 2 questions that I got in the private chat. One, what are you doing to better yourself during isolation, or what are you hoping you come out of this better because of? And then 2, maybe you can just explain the story behind Eat the Frog as a kind of wrap up, because I think it's a good metaphor for a lot of the things you've talked about today.
Yeah, so those 2 things kind of go hand in hand. So I'm going to start with Eat the Frog because I think it's really cool. Eat the Frog is the name of my group fitness franchise. It's basically based on a quote that Mark Twain kind of made famous that says, if it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And there's another piece to that kind of comes along that says, if it's your job to eat 2 frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first. And really what that's about is it's about not procrastinating. It's attacking the hardest thing of your day first thing in the morning, or first thing, because the rest of your day will fail in comparison to that, right? Everything will feel easy once you've done that really hard thing. And so what I always say is, for most people, their frog is fitness. And so I in my opinion, what I like to do is say, as an athlete, we know that as we look at our day, we know that it is going to be full of challenges and hurdles and things that you have to overcome. We don't know the specifics of it all the time, but we just know it's going to be there. You wake up expecting it. And so you have to take this athletic mindset to your day. You've got to get up and say, it doesn't matter what the world throws at me, I am going to take it head on. I'm going to run into that hurdle full speed, no matter what might happen. I might hit it, I might fall, there might be 100,000 people watching, but I don't care, because I want to get to that finish line. I want to be the first one to that finish line. And I try to get people to take that same attitude towards fitness, so that they can get their lives in order kind of from a fitness standpoint. And then once they can kind of take the steps to do it there physically, I think it's so much easier to roll that into other aspects of your life. And so what do I do first thing in the morning? I stay in a routine. We get up, we set our alarm clock every morning. My wife and I get up, I start my day with a devotional and coffee. So I sit down, I drink my coffee, and we do our devotionals. My wife does her own, I do mine. The house is still quiet, the kids are sleeping. Once I'm done with that, we have a plan. We have things that we have to do. We try to stay as active as possible. And so we're really blessed right now with Washington. It is beautiful outside. It's like 75 degrees and sunny and just absolutely gorgeous. And so I'm outside being physical. Like I'm working, I'm mowing the lawn, we go on runs, we go on walks, we go hiking, we do all kinds of stuff, and just try to be active, because there's something about being active. Even from a scientific standpoint, when you're active, it increases the oxygenation of your blood, which then goes up and gets all, because of the circulation that's going on, gets all the crap that's in your brain that's kind of stagnated over time, over the evening, and it brings fresh oxygen into your brain, which allows your brain to actually retain and learn information that much better. And so the reason why I don't understand why they're taking PE out of schools is because of that fact right there. People actually retain knowledge and actually learn better when they are physically active beforehand. The other reason why I would say to go out and be physically active is just because you feel better about yourself when you're stronger, when you're able to do things that you want to do, and your physical ability is not keeping you from having your desired quality of life. You just feel that much better about yourself. And you feel that much better about the way you look, the way that you sound, the way that you feel, and the way that you interact with the world around you. And so I would recommend getting up and starting every day with just a little bit of physical fitness. Walk, run, do a workout in your house. Talk to your mom. Like, the best thing you guys could do is, your mom and dads aren't working right now, more than likely. So get them up and make them go with you and watch how bad they struggle to do it. And give them a little crap for it, and then go do that as a family. I mean, those are the types of things, if you can make it fun and exciting, get your dad or your mom out there to play basketball with you, or something like that, go on a hike, whatever it is that you can do, be active for a little while, and then just see how you feel afterwards when you sit down to tackle an assignment, or sit down to tackle another thing that you have to take on during the day.
Awesome. Okay. I think with that, we're going to send you off. I know you have another meeting to get to too, but Bryan, thank you for sharing so much of your story.
No problem.
Yeah. My corroboration of his story is that I watched Bryan throwing up, passed out, and lying on the track for approximately 4 years of my life. And I think your approach brought home to me that, yes, you have to be talented to accomplish things, but you have to work hard to get there. And it's more
Absolutely.
important to work hard than it is to have some natural born or extreme talent. There were probably athletes more talented than you on the track, but none of them worked as hard, and certainly not harder than you. So thanks for being here with us today and sharing part of your story.
Yeah, no problem. I'll tell you this. My dad used to say to me all the time when I was growing up, he'd say, in every prison, there's somebody that's faster, stronger, smarter, better than you are. The difference is, how decisions is going to help you not end up like them. So I always had that in the back of my head, which is why I always work so hard. So thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Bryan. Have a good day. Tell your family I say hi.
I will.
Okay, we'll see you. Awesome. With that, and I think the best for those of you who want to, here, I'm going to go back on. For those of you who want to find Bryan on social media, I think you can find him on Facebook or Instagram and Eat the Frog Fitness. You could Google that as well, and you'd be welcome to reach out to him through those methods as well. So with that, Superintendent Balow, if you don't mind, I think we'd still love to hear an update from you. And if students have questions that they want to kind of share, I can also, Michelle and I can curate them, and we'll have a few to toss at you as well, but we'll hand it straight over to you to let you give us an update.
Awesome. Well, that is such a tough act to follow. And Mandy, you never fail as the rainmaker of just knowing and being around amazing people. Bryan was truly amazing, and I'm really grateful that I got to hear that. That was a timely message for me, and it was a timely message for my son as well, as we go through this. So thank you so much. So you guys, my time's going to be really different. I'm going to focus a little bit on just what's happening in our state, and I'll try to keep it super peppy and lively and relevant to you. And it's all about school and all about leadership in Wyoming. So as you know, there's no school, and I want to tell you, first of all, kind of what hand I had in making that happen. First of all, it obviously, excuse me, wasn't by choice, but I am Wyoming State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I'm one of 5 statewide elected officials in Wyoming. So as COVID-19 started heating up in Wyoming, I was in constant communication with your school superintendents, some of your principals and teachers, and with the governor and the state health officer to try to make decisions. Things really took a turn for the worse in Wyoming over the course of a couple of days as we saw schools across the nation closing. Wyoming needed to make sure that we were making the best choice for Wyoming students, even though there were no cases of COVID-19 in our state at that time. But we did go ahead and take the precautions, knowing that health and safety came first, to close schools for, at first it was for 3 weeks. And just so you know what that looks like, that is like not anything that we ever plan for in statute or policy or practice or in our thoughts. And what we focus a whole lot on in education policy are things like school performance ratings and assessment scores and accountability scores and all of the things that you guys at school don't need to think about. But we set the framework for education, and that framework shattered within the course or over the course of 3 days, and it was crazy. And all of a sudden, instead of thinking about your statewide assessment and your ACT and school accountability, we were thinking about how are we going to get kids fed? How are we going to make sure that kids connect with their teachers? And how are we going to make sure that kids are safe and healthy? And how are we going to take care of younger kids whose parents are first responders or doctors or nurses or have essential jobs and stand to be home alone during the day? And learning and teaching opportunities were about 5th on the list of priorities within the course of less than a week. And you know, it's really crazy to be a state leader in these times and make really big decisions that just 1 week prior, I had no idea that I would be making as a state leader, and it's been crazy. So just to, you know, you guys know better than I do where we are with education. Every single school district, there are 48 in the state of Wyoming, is operating on what's called an adapted learning plan. And the adapted learning plan, I personally approved all of those and talked to your superintendents about what they were doing to make sure that you had learning opportunities at home. And you're all doing that. This is a huge learning opportunity right now, and I'll get to that in just a second. But you know, the truth of the matter is that there's a lot that's keeping me up at night. First of all, when we talk about a crisis, whether it's a hurricane or
You guys are frozen on my side.
I think Superintendent Balow just froze for a minute. We'll give her a chance.
next one is recovery. Did you lose me for a minute?
Yeah, we lost you for just like maybe 10 or 15 seconds. I'm sure you said something really impressive, but we may have to.
Not really. I was saying that as state leaders, we put things into 3 different buckets. One is mitigation. What's an emergency? What do we need to do right now? What decisions do we need to make? So like waiving your statewide assessment, making decisions about the Hathaway scholarship, closing schools. Those are all decisions that affect you today. And so those are the emergent decisions or the mitigation decisions. The next bucket is the recovery. How are we going to reopen schools and what does that look like? And then it's back to normal. And how do we make sure that schools are opened up in a way that you benefit from it? And you guys, I'll tell you what's been really interesting to me and kept me up a lot of nights through this is thinking about you all in terms of whether you're a senior going on to college or whether you're, and there's no preschoolers on the phone, but maybe you have a niece or a nephew or a brother or sister or neighbor who's a preschooler, and how preschoolers are going to enter kindergarten differently than they do this year. And we as an education system have to adjust ourselves to meet you where you are and give you what you need to stay successful. And so it's been really challenging as a leader, and also along the way there have been so many inspirations, and I'm going to tell you today is one of them. Not just hearing from Bryan, but also from watching all of you on this presentation and being engaged in your own learning. This is probably not something that we would do in a normal school day, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Next week, Senator Barrasso is I'm setting up a virtual webinar for him to talk about what he does as a senator. That's nothing I've ever done before. And so you guys are defining this new normal for us. And we would be silly as educators and adults and state leaders to think that we're ever going back to the way it was, because we're taking lessons from every one of you and we're taking those back to the education system to make it better. And that's a really exciting time for all of us. You guys are champions. The way that you have, and I know I've got one right next to me right now. I know that there are a lot of adjustments as you adjust to online learning and adjust to not seeing your friends and adjust to having conversations in different ways with your teachers, but it's working, and some of you are really thriving in this situation, and we don't want it to always look like this. But what good parts can we take from the experiences that you're having right now, and how can we put those into the new normal classroom next year, this summer, whatever that looks like? But I want to just tell you from the bottom of my heart, I was a teacher for 10 years. I taught high school English. And so it's pretty easy for me to go back there and understand what you all are going through. But from the bottom of my heart, I just want you to know that in every decision that I make, whether it's a discussion with an attorney or with the governor or about a law or a statute or a policy, you all are at the forefront of those decisions. And we, you know, these are tough times, but you are my inspiration, and I'm so grateful for just your ability to adapt to this situation. And I think in many ways, this is helping define your generation. And I think your generation is going to display much more courage in the face of adversity. I think your generation is going to be much more adaptable than other generations have been, and you carry with you this really weird experience that no one, my dad kind of remembers World War II and says this is, sort of feels the same, but there's no one who's ever experienced this before, and this is the prime of your life, and you're going to be able to grow into adults with this experience, good and bad, to parent your own children someday with this experience, and to lead our state, your communities, and the nation and the world with this experience under your belts. And I find that really inspiring. So Mandy, I'm going to go ahead and stop there and just say thank you so much. And I would be happy to take any questions or comments. And like I said, Bryan is a really hard act to follow, but hopefully this brings it down a little closer to home. And you know, guys, ladies and gentlemen, that you have people who are making decisions and trying to do their very best for you every day in your community and across the state.
Thank you, Superintendent Balow. It's great to hear both kind of the professional journey you've been on as an elected official, and also your personal journey and what that looks like as a parent and teacher, former teacher, and all of those, and just an individual. And I think that's been one of the neatest things we've seen from each of the people who've spoken, even the governor, of just talking about what it means for them personally and adapting to the challenge. You talked a little bit about, one of our questions we've been asking is, does this feel familiar or similar to any other experience you've had in your life? And if yes, what was it? And maybe in what way does it feel different or unprecedented? Do you have any experience from your own life that you felt sort of out of control or chaotic in a way that you could relate to this experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciated seeing it in advance and having some time to think about it, because, you know, you could say, I think a lot of people are probably comparing this to 9/11 or my dad comparing it to World War II, but the truth of the matter is that nothing like this has really ever happened. So as I kind of pondered that question, this is going to sound really weird, but it reminded me a little bit of the first campaign that I ran when I ran for public office. And that is really unsure of what the outcome was going to be, but trying my very best every day to create the outcome that I wanted. And so I hope that doesn't sound trite or shallow, but I tried to just kind of think about the things, you know, when I ran for public office, I had never been in public office, and Mandy's heard me tell this story before, and I'm never going to miss an opportunity to talk about leadership with youth, whether it's virtual or in person. But I never envisioned myself being an elected official or a statewide leader. I kind of like being in the trenches, and I like being the person who, I like being the workhorse, not the show horse. And you get to a point where you see a place where you can possibly make a difference. And I decided to throw my hat in the ring and run for public office. And from the very beginning, my life changed. And I knew it would never, ever be the same, no matter whether I won the election or lost the election. And every day there were challenges. Some days, as Bryan said, it was tough to get up, you know, and do the next day, knowing that you would be asked tough questions, knowing that people didn't care for you or where you stood on things, and that you would have to just be yourself every day and hope that that was enough. And then there was inspiration along the way as well. And again, not knowing that you can't control the outcome, but that you want it to end well, no matter what the outcome is. And so that's how the campaign was a little bit for me. And again, that's probably a really weird metaphor or example, but just trying to point out that there are a lot of challenges and really unfamiliar and weird things that are happening every day as a result of COVID-19. But there are a lot of really inspirational moments that I hope change our culture and change me personally and as a leader for forever.
Awesome, thank you. I think Michelle's gonna ask a question too that we've had from a student as well.
Yeah, and I think it maybe can tie in actually to even a question that Mandy and I had come up with as well. So Ian, who I believe is from Rock Springs, I might be wrong, was wondering about, you know, since we have maybe hopefully started to flatten the curve in Wyoming, do you think it would be possible to go back to school May 1st? And then sort of in conjunction with that, what kind of factors are you considering when you're making these decisions? Because I know there are a lot in terms of not just the infection rates, but also kids' situations at home vary widely, how safe they are, and food supply and everything like that. And I guess, where do you even get the information to make those decisions?
Yeah, so I'm gonna just preface that and say that, you know, one of the, I need to take a breath before I answer this and say one thing that I'm really proud of in this situation was that within 3 days, every single school was delivering meals, and some were delivering 2 and 3 meals to kids and families that were hungry at no charge. And that was really amazing to see that infrastructure stand up really quickly and know that kids' basic needs like food are being met. Now, if you know a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's one of the very first things that we need, food and shelter, and the next is safety. And so let me tell you guys what's happened in terms of the safety of some of the most vulnerable students in our state. School is a safety net for those kids, for our most vulnerable kids. And almost all of the reporting, about 85% of reporting of abuse and neglect, comes from the school, comes from teachers and students telling trusted adults that things are happening at home that make them feel unsafe or that are causing them harm. That reporting has dropped off over 50% since school's been out. So what that means is not that kids aren't being neglected and abused, but it means that our schools don't know about that. Okay, because we don't have our hands on, we're not connected with them. We have hundreds of kids out there that haven't made contact with their teachers, that haven't made contact with their counselor, no matter the fact that everyone is trying to make contact with them, they just aren't able to be contacted. So for that reason and that reason alone, I am up every single night thinking about those kids and hoping that we can get them back to school so that they can make connections and feel the safety of having trusted adults in their life if they don't have them. So that aside, you know, all of you who are on this phone, if you're taking part, or who are on this call, if you're taking part in a series like this, you're learning, you're thriving, you're doing what you need to do. And if you're not, you want to make sure and use Safe to Tell and some of the other resources that are available to you, but you have access to those resources, right? There are some that don't. So when we send kids back to school, and boy, I sure would like to see us peak as a state and be able to go back to school for the last 2 weeks of school. First and foremost, to make sure that we can connect with the vulnerable students. But second, so that each of you can connect with your teachers, with your friends, and get some learning opportunities before you go away for the summer. I wish I could make that decision today, and I wish I could make that decision alone. When we make decisions about school closures, it is exclusively with the state health officer, Dr. Alexia Harris, and the governor and me. We have other people who advise us, but we make those decisions. I just was on the phone with the governor this morning talking about that very topic. Do you think we'll get there? We're hopeful that we will for so many reasons, but mostly because we want our kids to connect with teachers. We don't know if we will or not, though, and we'll continue to make decisions not sort of in a silo or unilaterally, but together, and it'll put the health and safety of students above first and foremost. And so there's your answer.
Yeah, thank you so much. It struck me as you said that we've actually had the governor and Dr. Harris as speakers on this series already, so you're our third.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I went to the office this morning and I forgot my phone, but I had my Apple Watch, and the governor called me, and which is always like sort of, you know, you see the governor's phone number on your cell phone and you're like, okay, whatever I'm doing, drop it and take it. And I'm like, I don't even have my phone. I'm going to talk to the governor on my smartwatch. But it worked. We got the problems of the world solved, but
That's awesome.
Well, Superintendent Balow, I know you have to duck off to a standing 2 o'clock call. So
Yep.
We will give you a big thanks for joining us. And we'll if students want to stick around and ask other questions, we can sort of curate those that we don't know the answers to and pass them along to you to provide additional context or anything else. So thank you for being flexible with Bryan. He's a bit of a talker, so I appreciate you talking faster to accommodate him.
that was amazing. And I just want you to know, next Thursday at 11 o'clock, Senator Barrasso is doing a virtual town hall with junior high and high school students. And Mandy and Michelle, I'll give you that information, and I'll be moderating that. And so we would love to have the students on this phone call join for that. It'll just be tailored for students, a little bit like this call. And of course, Senator Barrasso just has some wonderful things to share, and he's a real source of inspiration as well. So I'll give you that information once it's available, and we'd love to have your students join, okay?
Awesome, will do. Thank you, Superintendent Balow.
Thank you, everyone.